Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at Pitafi World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the current security situation in Pakistan. We have unfortunately seen an uptick in terrorist activities in the country, and this is, of course, has been something that has been going on, especially since the end of the ceasefire with the Afghan Taliban in November in 2022. And then, of course, with regards to the US withdrawal in Afghanistan and the way that things have unfolded since then. Most recently, of course, we've also seen attacks, particularly in the province of KP and Balochistan. And in this month alone, we have also seen a number of attacks that have targeted different positions. Of course, we have also seen that security forces, as always, have responded to these attacks and any activity towards Pakistan coming from both within and outside of the country. There have been numerous occasions on which Pakistan has reinforced and reiterated to Afghanistan and other bordering countries as well that it will not be tolerating any terrorist activities from across the border, something that has been echoed by the Prime Minister as well, who has said that there will be zero tolerance of any sort of terrorist activities from across the border. We have, of course, seen that Pakistan troops have responded befittingly towards this and other attacks. There was, of course, an attempt that was made at the Gwadar Port Authority complex as well, in which the security forces have managed to kill 8 attackers of the banned BLA, especially the Majid Brigade of this organization. And then, of course, we've also seen the kind of security efforts that have been made in Afghanistan as well, in intelligence-based airstrikes that were also targeting terrorist hideouts in Afghanistan that were responsible for the recent attacks in North Waziristan in Pakistan as well, at a security post in which unfortunately a number of soldiers and officers were martyred. And so this is, of course, something which is of great concern to Pakistan in terms of the fight against terrorism that Pakistan has been a part of for quite some time now, and what Pakistan has achieved on this front as well. And now, of course, with the way that different countries also need to be responsible in terms of being able to protect that their territory is not used against any others, and of course, especially in Pakistan's context, against it as well. And so we're going to take a look at these recent attacks and skirmishes and what is the reason behind the uptick of activities and what sort of measures are required to control and prevent these attacks. And then, of course, the involvement of different countries, including that of Afghanistan, within these efforts and what can be done on that front. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal. We've also been joined online by Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmad, who's a security analyst, and Brigadier retired Mr. Waqar Khan, who's also a senior analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of this discussion. Waqar Sahab, let me start with you with reference to what has recently happened in Balochistan. And of course, we will take an overall look of the different activities that have been going on in Pakistan in terms of security efforts and the way that these recent terrorist attacks have also outplayed, particularly in these provinces. But if we focus on what has happened in Gwadar and in the way that the Majid Brigade has targeted this complex, and that, of course, has been responsible for other attacks in the country as well, what do you see from this situation, particularly in terms of how we need to then analyze our efforts in Balochistan, and what sort of measures now need to be put in place?
I think if you look at the pattern in last 2 years, 2023 was, I think, worst because there were a series of attacks. Then we saw, a scale down during before the election and after the elections. And in last 15 days, one major thing happened, or I think 3 weeks, was a visit by Indian delegation to Kabul, which was celebrated on both sides. Where basically it was a diplomatic delegation, but most probably guys from Doval's office were there who basically commands the research and analysis wing also. So one, of course, was a nod maybe given by India that it should not be very quiet. And I think if you look at the overall pattern, 90% attacks have emerged from Afghan soil, few coming from, let's say, Iranian side as well. But I think Iran-Pakistan is a better mechanism. So by and large, everything is originating from there in terms of logistic support. And this evidence has been shared at all levels, political, diplomatic, regional. Like in Moscow format, I think they were very clearly told by Russia, Pakistan, Iran, and Central Asian republics to shut these terrorist outfits and factories. But somehow, I think any regime, I think last 2 decades in Kabul, feels that probably terrorism is one leverage they can use against Pakistan to draw certain concessions. And Taliban government is no exception, or interim government. So I think Pakistan's retaliation, which came, I think, which is again a new precedence. Pakistan used its military power. So military instrument was used effectively for the first time. There have been skirmishes across the border, but I think this was like against India in swift retort, or unfortunately, because of Iranian, I think, miscalculation against Iran. So Pakistan has now proven that when it comes to security, it could use this military instrument, which is, I think, very important, and I think it conveys a very strong message to the entire region. Now, interim government has, I think, two choices. One is to, as I think today, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif mentioned that terrorism is red line, our borders are sacrosanct, and we are ready to sit and discuss. So I think that could be the best option, and it can be done. Other option is that they can do whatever they want to do. So Pakistan may, I think, go one step up, and it could escalate. But I think loser will be the interim government, because if you look at Afghan situation today, 70% of population is now having a hunger threat. If you look at the global hunger index, Afghanistan is one of the worst. And if you look at the leverage Pakistan has, in case Pakistan starts using them negatively, I think people of Afghanistan are going to suffer that we will never want. So I'm sure the message is gone there, and hopefully we'll find some positive developments.
Right, absolutely. And these are important factors. Dr. Ishtiaq, I would like your perspective as well on this, especially when we talk about the fact that we have shared intelligence and we've shared evidence with, of course, various countries and on different platforms in terms of what really is going on and who is behind such attacks. But what really has come out of it? What do we make of such intelligence sharing, and whether or not that has in any way been fruitful in terms of countering terrorist activities within the country?
Well, as you know, that this is an established fact now, that Afghanistan, after the departure of American troops in 2021, is a safe haven of various terrorist groups, including those who operate across the frontiers in Pakistan. And I think in the last few years, successively we have seen, time and again, that terrorist violence, whether it is in the name of ethnicity or, religious motivation, it increases sometime, and then for a certain period, it decreases and comes back again. So I think in view of this recurring, happening, and there is a pattern now, and this pattern has become so complex. And I think Asif Durrani, our envoy on Afghanistan, the other day, he publicly stated that RAW is behind this upsurge in TTP terrorism in Pakistan. And I think enough is enough. We have seen several rounds, and they've had, horrific implications, both human and material, for the country. And I think time is up for Pakistan to have soft borders anymore. And if there is a problem emanating from across the frontier, including especially in Afghanistan, then I think the surgical strikes that we have undertaken recently, I think that is one mechanism that we should sustain in the future. Secondly, I think we need to seriously sit down, forgetting all of our party, preferences, whether in the opposition or the government, including all segments of the state apparatus, sit together and create a viable, comprehensive counter-terrorism strategy. And then we should go after BLA and TTP and any other organization which wants to harm the Pakistani people and destroy its economy. And I think along with political stability, which this election provides to Pakistan, this is a critical juncture for us. We are transitioning into an era which should be economically stable and politically stable as well. And I think these are, things that we should not compromise. And I think the action that we have taken across the frontier should be a model for us to exercise in future whenever such things happen.
Right, absolutely. Faisal, when this situation, of course, is something that confronts us and has been part of the country's fight against terrorism for quite some time now, how is it then that when we reevaluate and consider the kind of measures that have been successful and others that have not, how is it that we put into account the role of different countries, including that of Afghanistan, in making sure that these activities do not persist in the country? We have, of course, repeatedly on different fronts through various channels engaged with the relevant stakeholders in Afghanistan, but unfortunately, we haven't seen the kind of responsibility that we need. We've also just recently seen that in response to the intelligence-based operations that Pakistan carried out against terrorist hideouts in Afghanistan, we saw that there were border skirmishes as well. So what exactly can be done of the situation without compromising any diplomatic channels?
Yes, and obviously if we look at the situation right now, earlier of course, Brigadier Waqar, he has rightly pointed out that the meeting that took place very recently in between the obviously RAW officials and the Taliban officials, that is pivotal. I mean, what they were trying to do is, I mean, since since almost couple of years, they've been trying to get penetrated once more in Afghanistan in official basis. And now, of course, we know that since last year, the Jalalabad consulate, it has been activated once more. And we shouldn't be forgetting that India is a country that actually invited all of the NDS, the old NDS members in India, and in New Delhi, they have been nurturing them. And they were the ones who were having hatred against Pakistan, and they were the very people who had very good nexus within the TTP, within the BLA, BLF, all of these banned outfits, even the ISIS Khorasan as well. They had very good connections. And whenever they wanted to do anything in the neighboring countries of Afghanistan, they were easily doing it at that time. So they were being nurtured by India in New Delhi, and now obviously one by one they are being brought back to Afghanistan, and they know where all of these TTP and BLA and BLF are hiding, and they are the ones who are actually running the show. And of course they've got the money and they're using that money. And right now, of course, if we talk about Taliban, I mean Taliban here, they are portraying as if as long as it's not affecting their own country, it's all fine for them. Their silence is a criminal silence, and I think it is time for them to realize that this, whatever is taking place in Pakistan, it's a sin, and every sin has a punishment. And the punishment this time around would be for the Taliban as well, for their criminal silence, because they know that right under their nose this is taking place. 3 of the provinces, Kunnar, Nuristan, and of course Nangarhar. Nangarhar is the very province where Jalalabad is. And of course, if we talk about these hideouts, it's not only Pakistan that has been obviously highlighting this fact that there are hideouts, the terror hideouts. It is highlighted time and again by Taliban themselves as well, because they are facing a threat from ISIS Khorasan. And ISIS Khorasan, they are actually hand in glove with the Indians and hand in glove with all of the other terror outfits, be it ETIM, be it IMU, be it TLP, all of these, TTP I'm talking about, all of these banned outfits, they are there. And if they keep silent and they don't do anything, knowing that, oh, it won't affect them, well, you need to know this now, that Afghanistan is going to be affected, because their provinces, they are being used against Pakistan. And we shouldn't be forgetting, we have highlighted time and again that in Doha Accord, they obviously accepted at that time and signed the truce, and that was that they will never be allowing their land to be used against any of the neighboring countries, be it Iran, be it Pakistan, or any of the Central Asian republics. They will never be allowing their land to be used against them. But here we are standing again. Of course, we have been talking again and again, but I think this is time for Afghan Taliban to realize it, that this is the time that they need to settle it up, or obviously they will be facing the consequences. I hail Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif's statement here, that of course he will be welcoming any talks, because we need the resolve. It's not that we need a war, it's not that we want to be aggressive towards any other country. It's about the resolve, and we need that resolve, and Taliban must do sit with Pakistan, and this time around their silence will not be tolerated. Their silence will be considered a sin, and that sin would be punished.
Right, and I understand what you're saying, but Farrukh, I want to also take a look at Pakistan's efforts historically as well against terrorism. And of course, this is something that we've been able to counter previously as well and win over. And of course, this is something that has also started once again, and it's a threat that we're facing as part of the current situation. But I want to know whether or not there's anything fundamentally different about how we fought terrorism earlier and what we're dealing with right now, and whether or not when we talk about these measures, especially in light of other countries, including Iran and Afghanistan and India and others, is there something that we need to take a look at in terms of how we have a strategy in place, or how we are deciding on taking certain measures, and are there reasons behind the ways that we're handling it?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. First of all, welcome back. You were missed. And given that you spent this much time in Russia and you were even monitoring the elections, so one day we are hoping that we are going to switch role and we are going to quiz you about what went on there.
Why not?
Yeah, that will be lovely. But regarding you know, Afghanistan, regarding terrorism, see, Pakistan had almost you know, diminished or destroyed terror hideouts in Pakistan, and everything was looking up. And then we saw what happened during Imran Khan Saab's time when Afghan Taliban took over in Afghanistan, and then we made such humongous mistakes in concessions that are actually really bothering us even today. But having said that, it is important to remember that this time the response that Pakistan has shown, it has not only you know, drawn a line in the sand, but it has also exposed Afghan Taliban's narrative that there are no hideouts in Afghanistan, because we know, and this is while this is being kept hush-hush, at 8 places there were camps, there were you know, houses of these elements, including host, and there these people were killed. So what does it show? It shows that not only they are harboring fugitives of Pakistan, but they are harboring them in a way which can be intelligence-wise located. So Pakistan took this action, and I think that it was its right and it has done the right thing. And I haven't heard any nation actually complaining about it. Of course, Afghan Taliban, which is the regime which is not even recognized internationally, will actually raise hue and cry, but nobody else. This also has exposed something else, particularly this debate about good Taliban, bad Taliban. Hafiz Gul Bahadur, a group essentially is thought to be a group which used to be dubbed as a good Taliban group, right? Then their nexus with the Haqqanis and other elements, that is also well established, well known. So they are essentially reading from the same hymn sheet when it comes to Pakistan. And I think the question then arises, why would Afghan Taliban, when they have actually, as pointed out by Raja Faisal, that they have given an undertaking that they are not going to use, allow their homeland to be used against any other country. Why is it that they are harboring such elements which are involved in kinetic activities? So the answer would be that shoe is on the other foot, and you know, because of the imperial hubris that Afghanistan has been actually exposed to repeatedly, they believe that now the tail can wag the dog, that they can use Pakistan's own polarization against its people, and they can somehow export their own version of you know, caliphate into Pakistan as well. And because of that, they have been actually using these people as leverage. Now the problem with these elements and the way we have handled them in the past is that if these elements actually try to attack Pakistan again, we'll have to do the same thing again and again. And because of that, one has to actually point out that it is essential that one, and by the way, this Doha Accord, you know, an undertaking. I'm really keen to know what are the secret parts of that agreement, because we haven't seen that. Amazingly, neither Afghan Taliban nor the US or Doha government has actually exposed it. Regarding India's involvement, here's a clear indication, Sana. Day before yesterday, there was this attack. Then we saw that Pakistan took remedial action. And after that, all of a sudden, Majid Brigade actually attacks Gawada and particularly Port Authority. Who must be behind this? It is essentially Indians. Their intelligence agency has been baying for blood since ever. And they have been actually spewing so much hate towards Pakistan. So it is quite visible that only those people who are using all these outfits against Pakistan will be bothered if Pakistan attacks renegade elements in Afghanistan. So I think that India's role is well established. It is also important to remember that Pakistan has exercised its right to self-defense. Now, I don't think that Afghan Taliban have any other option but to give up these elements or their support. We keep on hearing, since yesterday we are hearing distant rumblings of disagreements within the ranks of Afghan Taliban and between Afghan Taliban and TTP. So let us hope it actually matures into some kind of action from their side as well against TTP.
Absolutely. And Brigadier Waqar, building on this, especially in terms of the kind of action that is required, what do you make of the way that we have seen things happen previously, and whether or not the current situation is going to guarantee any different response from the Afghan Taliban? And if there isn't one, what do we do? And also add to that with regards to the financing of terrorist activities and the way that different channels are used, what will Pakistan be able to do in this regard, especially with the way that a lot of this is interconnected in the region?
Yeah, I think in terms of leverages, Pakistan has just, I think, displayed one option. You have Afghan transit trade, you have Afghans which are to be repatriated, the illegal Afghans which I think run into millions. Then you have a grain supply. The wheat season is coming. And in case Pakistani wheat doesn't reach Afghanistan, actually it's going to be Afghan people who are going to suffer. Then you come to a lot of support for infrastructure, for instance, cement, artificial manure, and so many things basically. Even when the election is taking place in Afghanistan, I think when Ashraf Ghani was fighting, the flags were prepared in Lahore, mind you. So this is the kind of support, and also technical support. Pakistan has also helped in infrastructure. Just imagine if Pakistan starts shutting down and uses the leverages negatively. So I think it may cause actually collapse of the Taliban regime. But I don't think so Pakistan will go to that level. The only thing is now the difference is that military instrument has been used effectively for the first time. There have been a few, I would say, skirmishes or penalty strikes in the past, but this was a major operation displaying the capability. Also, I think we should note that Indian election is also coming, and to boost up Modi, they need trophies. Like Iran was instigated, so kind of trophy where Pakistani military can be undermined. Now Afghanistan, I think, is being played. So Taliban government has to understand that ultimately Pakistan and Afghanistan are twin brothers, as they call it, and we are called the elder brother. It can't be the elder brother is slapped every time and he will keep quiet. So sometime then he will retaliate and maybe punch on your nose. So I think that was the military instrument, and the message, larger message coming from Prime Minister is that we can resolve it. And if you look at diplomatic and economic costs that Afghanistan government will pay, interim government, they'll go into isolation. Today, you must have heard during hearing of Donald Lu, there was a discussion on Afghanistan and terror emanating from there. I've already mentioned that in Moscow format, entire region from Russia, Iran, Central Asian Republics, Pakistan condemned Afghanistan in September last year and told them to shut down these terrorist factories. And then is definitely Middle East, nobody wants. People are talking of corridors, connectivity and development. And ultimately, if you look at Afghan people, in terms of poverty in last 2 years, they have gone into, I think, worse situation. Women are suffering, and it's not a very happy situation. So all told, I think if Taliban are no more non-state actor, but they claim to be running a government, they should become responsible. And I think we can sit down and sort these things with mutually benefiting results.
And they are now state actors. Yep.
Right. Dr. Ishtiaq, when we take a look at the way that, of course, different countries also have their opinions with regards to the kind of terrorist activities that go on in the region, and many, of course, have also pointed out, including the US, towards cooperation on this front as well. What sort of cooperation do you think can exist for counter-terrorist activities between Pakistan and other countries, such as the US? And what does that mean tangibly on ground, and whether or not this is something that we absolutely need in terms of what is going on right now?
Well, this is one area where Pakistan, a number of regional countries and great powers have a consensus, which is combating terrorism. And if terrorists have safe havens in Afghanistan, and they equally, are of equal concern to China for some reason, for us, obviously. And for a long time, the US was also concerned because of Al-Qaeda. And the Gulf nations also have a similar position with regard to Afghanistan. They also perceive a potential threat from ISIS and others. So therefore, on counter-terrorism, I think Pakistan has a great opportunity to bring all countries together once again, highlight, its own suffering because of perpetual terrorism by TTP and other organizations. And Pakistan, at the same time, has to keep up the pressure. It has to make the cost of inaction by Taliban regarding counter-terrorism claims heavy with the passage of time. Because if we do not raise the cost, then obviously Taliban regime, which is an interim regime, came into power after the departure of the Americans, loses legitimacy in the eyes of the regional states and the great powers. So Pakistan, unfortunately, the issue that I see right since the time the Afghan jihad against the Soviet occupation ended in Afghanistan back in 1989, we have been, sacrificing ourselves for the sake of the Afghans. The jihad ends, and what we had, the Mujahideen government, led by Rabbani and Ahmad Shah Massoud, turns against us, toes India's line. And then you have the regional proxy war throughout the 90s, leading to the rise of the Taliban. And then post 9/11, a 20-year war, follows. And again, we see the Taliban, whom we were accused of supporting during this war on terror. And then again, what you see on the ground is again the Indian officials, connected with RAW and the national security establishment, visiting and, building relations with the Taliban. So one thing that I have failed to understand, throughout this 40 plus years of Afghan history is that, a country that has been kind, accommodated, millions of refugees, has been helping, through thick and thin. And even after the Americans left in 2021, in 1 year we held 2 international conferences here, the OIC, promising, the humanitarian assistance through OIC, other Muslim countries. And Pakistan became the key venue. So is this the return that we get in the form of growing TTP terrorism and a killing spree by ISIS, inside the country? With BLA again targeting, strategic areas such as Gwadar, which is very crucial for CPAC projects. So my point ultimately would be that, Pakistan, with its history and engagement, in the neighborhood, plus the CPAC as a very strategic, project. So Afghanistan under Taliban has a great opportunity to join hands with Iran, with Pakistan, and contribute to the economic progress of Afghanistan and the region itself. The other option is that to play these deadly games, toe the Indian line, and create a regional mayhem, which Pakistan obviously cannot afford. And I think we should try our best to get rid of this, menace once and for all.
Right, absolutely. Faisal, of course, this is something that we're talking about in terms of things going on outside of Pakistan as well and their impact, of course, within the country. But if we look inward, especially in terms of what our measures and strategies have been with regards to different terrorist organizations, with regard to intelligence sharing across provinces, and of course, with protecting border areas as well, what do you make of the way that different measures have been previously taken and the fact that we are standing at this current situation, and whether or not any sort of reevaluation or reanalysis is required to be able to deal with that and how to improve that within the borders of Pakistan as well, and particularly also in terms of accountability of the kind of actions that have caused the situation to arise, and whether or not there can be or there will be any sort of process with regards to true accountability.
So now obviously when we talk about our security forces and intelligence services, their work, of course, to secure and safeguard Pakistan, they are working 24/7. Even now when we are talking to each other in this show, they are at the job and they are working really hard to make sure that Pakistan is safeguarded from all of these internal as well as the external threats which are faced by Pakistan. And if we talk about these incidents, out of let's say if every day 10 incidents are planned, if every day 10 incidents are planned, then one might get away with it, rest of all they get caught. It's like the ratio of countering it before it takes place is so high, and I think we must salute our security forces and intelligence services for doing so. Yes, there are incidents that do take place. There are certain things that needs to be improved. Of course, Pakistan has the tech. Of course, Pakistan is using every possible way to make sure that Pakistan is safeguarded, but there are few that still take place. But we shouldn't be forgetting that our forces are always trying their level best to, of course, counter it. Here the problem is, of course, not our capabilities. Our capabilities are really good. Our forces, even if we talk about the police services, Balochistan's police service, I mean today when the incident took place in Gwadar, of course they have played an excellent role. Intelligence services have played the excellent role. MI or ISI, they have played an excellent role there. So what I'm trying to say is, all of the police services, they have the will, they have the right mechanisms, they have the right trainings to counter all of these threats. When it comes to, of course, few of the attacks still taking place, of course, I can simply say that in a larger context, all of these threats, where they are originating from, that is need to be settled. I mean, I still remember, earlier, of course, we talked about India, and Brigadier Waqar again highlighted the trophy that India requires for getting into elections. BJP's government is obviously, getting into election once more, and Modi wants to have the trophies, and this is a trophy for her, of course, Modi and BJP. Reason being, when it comes to India facing two-front threat, of course, one from China, one from Pakistan side. I still remember that when Galwan incident took place, the attack which was, of course, against India from the Chinese side at Galwan, Eastern Ladakh. At that time, I still remember I was sitting in the shows, and their general level analysts, security analysts, they were telling me that whatever has happened to us in the mountains, will avenge it in the seas. And of course, he meant that when we talk about CPAC, of course, CPAC is something that is very dear to Pakistan and equally to China as well. So whatever happens against CPAC in Pakistan, that is not only towards Pakistan, it is towards China as well. It's a sort of act that is being taken against China's investments. And especially when we know that India has the ambitions to have a parallel to CPAC, a route that they actually want to have Chabahar, we know that they have been investing out there $2.7 billion. They've already spent there, and they want to have a parallel with the CPEC, and they want all of these Central Asian republics and Afghanistan to disconnect from Pakistan, and of course they want to have their own routes for them. What I'm trying to say is that they will be doing every bit to make sure that CPEC is a failure and Pakistan's friendship with China is a failure, and they are of course in a distance from each other. And when it comes to Pakistan, Pakistan is not only engaged against India on the eastern front, but it is engaged on the western front as well. This is what we saw, that whatever happened when of course BLA was present of course in Iran, and Pakistan attacked them, and that episode had everything to do with India's ambitions, because India wants Pakistan to be engaged against Iran, to be engaged against Afghanistan. All of the borders they want Pakistan to get engaged with. Reason being, they know that they are already facing two fronts, one from China and one from Pakistan. To lesser the fears, their own fears, they want Pakistan to get engaged elsewhere as well.
Right, but Faisal, my question of accountability at home remains, and I want to know whether or not that's something that we've already achieved or are in the process of achieving.
Sana, when we talk about, of course, accountability at home, I mean, from our security services, from our intelligence services, whatever we expect, they deliver more than our expectations. Believe me, they deliver more than our expectations. So there is
right, but there are other stakeholders as well. I'm not just talking about the security forces.
Exactly, there are. But when we talk about, of course, our political setups, of course, we have internal politics that needs to be sorted, and we need to have our house in order when it comes to politics. And of course, I can expect from all of the political parties that they can sit together, and on this, at least they can have a consensus. All of the political parties.
But what's really not in order? Do we not have a consensus that there's zero tolerance against terrorism?
There is a zero tolerance obviously on terrorism, but when it comes to, of course, one of the parties is leaning towards the Taliban. We know that they have a very soft corner, and I think all of the political parties, they need to sit together, and like we had a consensus back in 2014-15, that consensus needs to be obviously revised.
Let me build on this more, Farrukh, and of course we have a newly elected government. Of course, this is one of the biggest challenges that this government is also facing, and of course these political parties have had their differences in the past, but this is of course a national level threat, and I want to know whether or not the way that we have seen previous political elements come in the way, and the way that we've seen that there was some level of tolerance that was shown in the past. How do we ensure that moving forward this is something that we absolutely agree on, and that there is one consolidated policy measure that is taken on this front?
Rest assured, Sana, that now that policy is not going to be revived. That policy that damaged Pakistan so much, right? And I must actually commend you on getting back to Raja Faisal, who was displaying heroic attempts to sidestep the question, but you took him there. The accountability that he is talking about is essentially about the grassroots level or the operative level, right? There is a robust mechanism already to weed out any people who are essentially, who at times go native. And that is known to happen not only in Pakistan, but in the US, Russia, China, elsewhere as well. So that is taken care of automatically. But you were talking about the rot at the top at that time. The bad decisions that were either inspired by some kind of politics or some kind of ambition. So I think I'm happy to report to you that we have confirmation, and this has been actually going on for past 6 months, that the accountability on that score has also started. And that will be taken care of. Pakistani blood is not free. Anybody who compromised in a way that further led to bloodshed in the country cannot be forgiven, right? Now, I wanted to actually talk about the overall situation as well, and I just wanted to looking at the way we have been actually looking at various relations. First, if you remember, I was perhaps the first person who was before Afghan Taliban's takeover repeatedly telling you about two things. The potential of a nexus between Indian intelligence agencies and Afghan Taliban, because this is a very different force from what we saw in 1990s, right? And I kept on doing it, and at that time I was shouted at even by a journal, right, and umpteen other friends of mine. But sadly, that is something that has been proven right repeatedly. I think that after that, Afghan Taliban actually, one has to ask, why did they choose 15th of August to actually take over Kabul? And that is something that nobody actually thinks about, because it is India's Independence Day and then Afghan Taliban's Independence Day. So those things are there. But my other concern at that time was that there is no reset button in Kabul the moment Afghan Taliban take over, because they first thing they do is they neutralize any kind of political opposition. So you cannot actually go to somebody else and hope that someday they are going to take over, right? I think it will be prudent for anybody who is looking at Afghan situation to keep demanding a declassification of entirety of Doha Accord, so that we know what kind of legitimacy or what kind of powers were acknowledged there regarding Afghan Taliban, and then also build on some kind of possible alternative as well. That is someday going to happen. It is not Pakistan's job. All neighbors will have to ensure that people who are on the run from Afghan Taliban are able to go back and reorganize themselves into a political force, at least in a democracy or any kind of, any semblance of democracy or political order. You have to have two countervailing forces so that things actually go ahead. Now regarding Narendra Modi and trophy, okay, for Raja Faisal is directly connected to many media persons and he frequents their channels, but I have my old contacts as well, so I keep on hearing certain things. For example, India's Modi is actually dying to come to Pakistan and build on some kind of peace, because this time he needs to actually be known as International Man of Peace, and he gets a Nobel Prize afterwards. Who is stopping them? India's deep state. And so wary are they that they are actually actively trying to sabotage his possibility of victory. And you might be astonished the way legal cases are unfolding, the way other things are happening, that it is essentially death by 1,000 cuts. And repeatedly here and there were leaving traces of extremism of India, and then it all goes back to Narendra Modi. So I am not worried about internal politics of them or anything else. My concern is that Pakistan has to build on its own defenses and ensure that if anybody violates our international border, they are faced with reprisals. And this time it has actually happened. And I remember those days when Raja Faisal actually used to advocate for this kind of outcome. So I'm hoping that he is happy with finally getting what he wanted. But the fact is, anybody who sheds Pakistan's blood, Pakistani's blood, should not be forgiven. Whether it is Pakistani citizen, whether it is a foreigner who is intervening here, or whether it is somebody who by a fault of their own omission or commission, they have allowed this to happen in the country.
Right, absolutely. Brigadier Waqar, very quickly, anything else that you'd like to add, especially in terms of something that where we should be doing but are not?
I think one important, although it's going back into history, in last 300 years, there have been 60 wars involving Afghanistan or battles. And in last in last 4 decades, there were 2 superpower interventions. So it has been an unstable, I would say, area or our western border. So that should be kept in mind, that if you think we are in a bubble and everything will go hunky-dory, it will take a while. But I think Pakistan should use all leverages, yes.
Absolutely. Dr. Ishtiaq, what else do you think we can do?
Well, Sana, statecraft is a complex affair. We must continue the constructive engagement with any government, be it Taliban in Kabul. But simultaneously, if the situation demands, force must be used. Second, that we should look at history and we should understand that with regard to war on terror, our counterinsurgency, campaign in the border areas became an exemplary role model for the NATO to emulate. And second, after the Peshawar attack on the horrible attack, for 2 years we were able to fight terrorism and finish it. So there is a success story in the recent past, and I think our security apparatus is strong enough to combat terrorism emanating from across the frontiers in Afghanistan this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Ishtiaq Ahmad, for joining us, and thank you very much, Brigadier Waqar Khan, for being part of the discussion as well. Of course, much remains in terms of what needs to be done, but we, of course, have absolute confidence in the resolve and in the preparedness of our armed forces, and we thank them every day for what they have done for us and continue to do for us. And so better days lie ahead, hopefully, and this is something that we'll be able to counter as we've done previously. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for always being part of the debate. That's all that we have from the show today, and we'll now see you tomorrow.